Shalom from Jerusalem. My name is Shani Ferguson. The vote was unanimous, and this is what you need to know about it. When Syria fell and the rebels, who are essentially a lot of different groups and sects of Islamic extremists, got together and toppled Syria, the Druze who live in Syria got together and had a vote. And in their vote, they requested to be subsumed into Israel. Why does this matter? When the rebels recently toppled Syria and Assad, who had ruled Syria for all these years, fled to Moscow and is enjoying his safe haven with President Putin, Israel immediately went and took over the second half of Mount Hermon. A lot of people don't know this, but Mount Hermon is the only place in Israel where you can go skiing. But if you ski down the wrong side of the mountain, you will end up in Syria. So as soon as the regime fell, and there's mass chaos now because the rebels are essentially many different sects of Islamist extremists, Israel immediately went to create a buffer between all the chaos that is happening in Syria and its residents and citizens in the Golan Heights. Now, the Druze during this time got together, the Druze that are living in Syria got together, and they unanimously requested to be subsumed into Israel. Why? The Golan Heights years ago was occupied by Syria. And in the Six-Day War, Israel took that area because it's a mountainous area and serves as a natural boundary to separate the chaos from Syria, who is often hostile to Israel, and the civilians and the towns in the Galilee area in Israel. At the same time that all this chaos is happening in Syria, Israel took the initiative to take out the entire air force that Syria has, as well as many of the chemical weapons that Assad had created and used on his own people. Probably didn't hear about it. A lot of people didn't protest the fact that 500,000 civilians were killed by Assad over the past decade or so, and chemical weapons were used against them. So during this time, Israel said, we don't know who's going to be in power in Syria, and so what we're going to do is eliminate their ability to terrorize the surrounding region and destabilize with firepower and air force power. But the fascinating part about the Druze in Syria wanting to be subsumed and become part of Israel is that the whole fight between the Palestinians in Israel all this time has been that Palestinians want their own country and they want their own rule and they want to be separate from Israel. But when it comes down to it, the Druze in Syria are saying, if we have to choose between two evils, it's not like they love Israel, but they do recognize the stability and the freedom that they will have in Israel. And they say, we want to be able to keep our dignity. We don't trust the Islamic extremists that have just taken over Syria. And we want to be reunited with our brothers and sisters who are Druze that live in the Golan Heights. Interestingly enough, the fall of Syria has created a ripple effect that really began in October 7th. And all these terrorist organizations are actually watching Israel's dominance in taking out the leaders in Hezbollah, taking out the leaders in Hamas. And the rebels in Syria have said, we will hold true our commitment to the 1974 ceasefire. Whatever the rules were there, that's what we're going to hold. We don't want any beef in Israel. Hezbollah has now said that they want a peace treaty with Israel, which is mind-blowing because their sole existence was so focused on destroying Israel. But now that the toppling of Syria has cut off their weapons supply from Iran, they realize they're at a very weak spot, and they are asking for a peace treaty. And in Syria, the most fascinating thing has been that the rebels and the civilians living there have been handing over weapons to Israel. So all these weapons caches that have been in Syria all this time, they're actually giving it to the IDF to take care of, to destroy whatever it is that needs to be done. That shows a huge level of trust. Whereas before the narrative was so much, genocide, what are they going to do these things? They just use their power to destroy. And yet here we have Islamist extremist rebels cooperating with Israel to remove and demilitarize that entire area. It's a fascinating turn of events. It's very interesting to see what Israel's going to do with the Druze request to be added into Israel, because that is not an easy thing to do. Currently, right now, as they have taken over Mount Hermon and kind of the buffer area that borders Israel, that is just temporary because they want to make sure that none of the chaos and infighting comes into Israel. But it's definitely, as I've said over and over, this is a crucial time in the Middle East. Stability is key. Israel is really the only stable place, for better, for worse, with whatever internal issues we have. Our prime minister is busy testifying in court cases against him. These are 8-year-old court cases that are finally happening. So it's definitely an interesting time in Israel, but the next people who will take their places of leadership in countries like Lebanon, in organizations like Hezbollah, in Syria, and in Gaza, will be setting the stage for possibly what will be the leadership for the rest of our lives. So thank you for praying, and thank you for caring, especially during this holiday season. We have branches all over the world, including Ireland, where Israel just pulled their embassy out. There is still a Maoz Ireland. So we have our people from 8 different branches from all over the world who are advocating and praying and reaching out to people in their local area. Go to our website and find out if we're in your country and be in touch with us. Until next time, I'm Shani Ferguson. Shalom from Jerusalem.